All right, it now gives me great pleasure to hand the meeting over to our speaker tonight, who is Ronald W., and he's going to be speaking to us on the topic of hope for tomorrow. Come on in, Ron.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ronald White. I'm an alcoholic. Valerie, thank you for asking me to come and share with you guys. Want to welcome our new friends, those who raised their hands at the beginning of the meeting. Really a miracle to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know I was going to have a topic. I saw the flyer with the thing on there, Hope for Tomorrow, and I thought, well, is that supposed to be my home group? Or is that, I said, that's not my home group. But I said, oh, well, Hope for Tomorrow. So that is the topic. So, what the heck, I'm an alcoholic. I can wing it. I have a sobriety date. It's July the 14th of 1986. I have a sponsor. His name is Jerome Scott. I have a home group. It's called the Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. We meet every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for those who are living in other spots, which we have a lot on here right now. You adjust your clocks accordingly. We welcome everybody to that group. We have about 400 or so intimate friends who get together every Sunday morning and take a stroll through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had the privilege of being able to do that since November of 1987, after I had a little bit over a year of sobriety. But this topic, Hope for Tomorrow, I might almost rename it, if I would be so bold as to Hope for Today. Because I know that the toughest thing an alcoholic has to do is to stay present. I'm always in yesterday or in tomorrow, but it's very hard for me to stay present. And so my hope is that for every alcoholic who is within the sound of my voice, who's on this platform, to know that at the present I have hope. I have an abundant amount of hope. And that is born out of the desperation that I first had that when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous on July 14th of 1986. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, what we're like today. And I understand that it's very important in Alcoholics Anonymous for me to share about the 12-step program of recovery that's outlined in our big book. It is vital that I talk about that design for living that I've been given. But it's probably even more important that I share with you what I used to be like. Because there's someone who is in this Zoom meeting this morning, and you might be looking at Ronald White, and I think I look kind of nice, right? Kind of dressed up and spiffy, right? I almost want to turn my head around so you guys can see this nice little thing I got in the back of my head. But I actually have my hair done today. I have. Do you guys mind if I take off my jacket? I want it to look nice for you guys, except it is hot as hell here in Los Angeles today, right? And y'all done seen the suit coat, so you know that I clean up well. So I'm gonna take this off, put it back here, and I'm gonna come all the way in and sit all the way down, and let's have a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm 66 years old. I tell you that because I want you to understand some of the references I might make when I'm speaking to you today. I was born in 1954 and born and raised in Los Angeles, California, a part of Los Angeles known as South Central Los Angeles. Watts is the name of the small little area that I grew up in. Very impoverished area of Los Angeles. Raised by a mother and father. I have 5 brothers. There's 6 boys in my family. 4 of us happen to be members of sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous nowadays. Now, when I say that, 4 y'all right, it might sound like our house was very chaotic and that it was but it wasn't. I had a drunk of a father. My father was an alcoholic, a wino, we used to call it back in the day. He used to like to drink cheap wine, except my mother put him out of the house when I was 8 or 9 years old. So we didn't have much drinking in my house in a lot of my formative years. And my father, even though my first inventories, I used to say that he was abusive, that he was, all that. My father was more of an absentee drunk. Even when he was at the house, he seemed to be absent. I don't have any real strong memories or recollections of him being very involved in my life or in the raising of me. It was primarily my mother. And so I make up shit, y'all. I just need to let you guys know.
Ronnie, you're muted.
Who muted me? Why would you? Did I say a bad word and it automatically muted? Do I have to watch my language, y'all? I'll try to be. I'll try to watch it, but I might drop an occasional, because I'm going to talk to you from the heart today, and I'll try to keep it as clean as possible. As I come through my childhood, I'm the third oldest in my family. I have my oldest brother's name is Willie. The brother over me's name is Ralph. I'm Ronnie. Then there's Reggie, and there's Ricky, and there's Rod. And being this middle son, I always, and it's funny, this reflective thing we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is I reflect back on my life. Some of the things that are highlighted in my thinking are not always the reality, the full reality of the way that I was raised and of my situation in life. Except I'll just simply share with you my perception. When I grew up, I perceived myself as being the shortest out of the six. I was the darkest out of the six. That ain't true, but I felt like I was the darkest. And as I share these things, I didn't think these were positive things, right? I'm too short. I'm too black. I've got 4 eyes. I've wore glasses since I was in the 2nd grade. There are all these things, excuse me, about myself that I don't like myself. I'm full of self-loathing. We're poor. I've got this father who's a drunk. Then I don't have a father. I hate him when he's there. Then I hate him for not being there. Change my circumstance, no matter what it is. It seems like you cannot please me because by my nature, I am irritable, restless, and discontented. I so identify with the writings of Dr. Silkworth, who wrote the letter that's been included in our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And Dr. Silkworth said that these are the feelings I have when not drinking. See, I haven't even taken a drink yet. I don't even take a drink till I'm 17. But as I grew up, I still had the ism, this, I don't want to call it self-obsession, but this self-absorption, this, I was really just so full of myself as I grew up. And everything that I looked at was like, poor me. I always looked at what I lacked rather than what I had. I didn't look at the fact that I had a loving mother. I looked at the fact that I had a mother that was a domestic. She cooked and cleaned for other people's families and stuff. And I didn't like that. That didn't look glamorous. That didn't look sexy. That didn't look like what I saw housewives looking like on television, right? My mother is the hardest working woman that I know, the most spiritual woman that I know. Yet when I grew up, the way that I felt about her wasn't with a sense of pride and a sense of all those other kinds of things. I love my mother, except, it's sometimes when I share these things about myself, I feel so embarrassed, right? And I feel so ashamed of my thinking. But this is the way it is, y'all, and I'm going to give it to you uncut. So I grow up, and as I grow up in this family, I feel like I need to escape because of the way that I felt about myself internally, that I felt like I just wasn't good enough. And so I find my escape in books, in libraries. I become an addictive reader. Me and Reggie and Ralph would all go to the libraries together. And we check out the maximum number of books. And when I would read, I would escape. And I love novels like spy novels and espionage and intrigue and conspiracy. I love that shit, man, because I love the heroes that were portrayed in that because they were just the opposite from me. They were dangerous and they were exciting and they were strong and they were handsome and they were all those. And I would be transformed. When I would read these books, I would be transformed into all of these characters. I love TV. because my disease is progressive. After a while, books weren't enough. And so I started looking at television, and it was so much easier. It was just fed to me. And I knew they used to call me the human TV guy, because I would knew whatever was on any channel, any time of the day, any day of the week. Ralph would play a game. Neighbors would come over to the house, and he'd just hunch me and say, hey, man, watch this. And I'd be just face to face to the television just because I was glued to it. And he'd just yell out, Ronnie, Wednesday, 8 o'clock. And without moving, I said, 8 o'clock, go channel 2 is Gunsmoke, channel 4 is Mannix, channel 5 is Donna Reed, channel 7 is I knew whatever was on any channel, any time of the day, any day of the week. Some of our members on here look confused when I name those shows because, you might not recognize them. Those were the shows I was raised on, right? And thank God we only had about 9 channels, I think, at the time when I grew up, right? Thank God they didn't have cable. Oh, shoot. Don't tell them what would have happened to me. But I need to let you know that there was one television show that I gravitated to that later became one of the guiding forces in my life. Perhaps some of you guys remember this TV show. It was a show called Perry Mason. Perry Mason was a criminal defense attorney played by an actor named Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr was one of the handsomest white boys I had ever seen on TV. Broad shoulder, jet black hair, slick back. He had a command and I'm talking about that Raymond Burr on the black and white series. Not after he was Ironside, and he had gained weight, did all this other kind. I'm talking about Raymond Burr, man, he was the man, right? And I would be glued to every episode, and he always had a witness on the witness stand at the end, and he was trying to get his client off, and the witness would get nervous, and Perry's private eye, Paul Drake, would come in with a little note, and he'd give it to Perry. Perry would read the note, and he'd look at that witness, and the witness would just start to flinch, and Perry would just say, isn't it true? And they say, yes, right? The witness would break down on the witness stand or cry, and that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Perry Mason because Perry had power. He had the power to bend people's will to his simply by the force of his presence and his words. And I thought, maybe I could do that. He wasn't a superhero in a comic book like I used to watch or somebody in a novel. He was a real man. I could see him on the TV. And I thought, maybe I could do that. So I grew up wanting to be Perry Mason. I wanted to be a lawyer. As I come through school, I'm on the honor roll of every class that I've ever been in because I was one of the most articulate kids in my classes. I was ready-made for school because of all the reading that I had done and all the fantasy I had ingested from movies and television. I was very well read. I was very articulate. I could write essays and exams very good. I was the teacher's pet in every class that I was in. And so I was very... And as I matriculate through school, as I go from class to class, I'm always following my brother Ralph. Ralph is 1 year older than me, and he was always in the class right ahead of me. And when I would go there, they always said, oh, you're Ralph White's brother, right? I started to think that was my name, Ralph White's brother, right? And I hated it. I had both a sense of somebody in here understands having a duality of feelings. And at the same time that I was proud of him and felt lucky to have him as my brother, I didn't like him because I had to live in his shadow. Because I would question myself and wonder, are my accomplishments really mine, or am I only getting it because of him? Because he had blazed this trail, because he was there in front of me. So at the same time that I love you, I resent you. A pattern and a theme that's going to go throughout my entire life. Right. And so as I come through school, I start playing a musical instrument. I play trombone and I join our symphonic band and our orchestral band. And we're going to competitions. And it's so much fun because I can't play sports. I'm too little. So we compete in music. Right. And that was my sport. And so and I was pretty good at it. Right. But I was always second chair. I was not quite first chair. Right. Story of my life, right? Even though I'm good, I always look at what I don't have rather than what I do have, right? A few of us in that band formed a jazz ensemble. We went to the Hollywood Bowl here in Los Angeles and competed in the Battle of the Bands, and we won sweepstakes as the top jazz band in the nation. My marching band was the top marching band in Los Angeles, and we marched in the Rose Parade in Pasadena on New Year's Day. We raised funds, and we flew to Hawaii and marched in the Aloha Parade. I had never been out of South Central Los Angeles, and I'm in Hawaii, right? I get accepted. I'm voted my senior class president, and I apply for college and get accepted to go to college on a full academic scholarship at a college called Loyola University. It's now known in Los Angeles here as Loyola Marymount University. It's a private Catholic school run by the Jesuits. Shit, I'm a Baptist kid. I'm a Southern Baptist, right? I ain't never stepped foot in a Catholic church, yet I'm being accepted to go to this college on a full free because of my grades, my academic prowess. But you know something? It sounds as I share it with you guys that I had a lot of gifts, that I had a lot of things I had done to be proud of. But guess what, Christian? Even while I have the things, I'm thinking about what I don't have. That instead of me being happy about my blessings, I'm too busy looking at yours. I don't want to be no bookworm. I want to be a quarterback. I want to be somebody scoring touchdowns that's being written up in the LA Times. Nobody, and got cheerleaders, right? Cheering for them, right? With those big pom-poms on the sidelines. Nobody ever came in science class with pom-poms. Yes, Ronald, that's the right answer. Right? You know, I had never received the accolades and the applause and the appreciation that I had always craved, right? Now, I know, looking in hindsight, looking back, I told you, I'm a senior class president. People love me. People like me. But it never felt like enough. Irritable, restless, and discontented. I get ready to go to college in 1972. And my 12th grade class gave a beach party to celebrate our graduation. And as I'm walking along the beach by myself with a can of soda, the professor, that's what they called me, I saw a guy and a girl underneath a blanket, and the blanket was moving. And I said, I want to get underneath a blanket. But everybody knows I'm the professor, and the professor don't get underneath blankets. And somebody was passing around something, and I wish I remember what it was, because it became my first drink. It was either some Tyrolia or some Spanada, cheap wine, just like my father used to drink. And although I said I would never drink because I didn't want to become my father, my thinking, my ego told me I'm smarter than him. He a high school dropout. I have since learned that he wasn't. See, I told you, I tell myself lies to justify my belief system, right? And I delude myself, and I tell myself I'm different than him. He's not as smart as me. He was a janitor, a custodian. I'm going to be the next Perry Mason. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm better than him. So I know I can drink, and I'll never become like him. And so I drank. And probably only another alcoholic can truly understand the effect produced in me by alcohol. It made me feel taller. It made me feel bigger. It made my skin feel lighter. It made me feel cooler. It made me feel like I had this confidence, this inner sense of belonging. It made me feel like I was a part of a fellowship of men and women who shared their experience, strength, and drinks with each other. And I had found the fellowship that I craved. And when I started to drink, man, I was no longer socially awkward. I was cool. I fit in. Seemed like I knew how to cuss all of a sudden. I knew how to dance. Now, mind you, check this out. I told you how I have selective memory to justify and support my narrative. I said alcohol made me, be able to dance. When I was in high school, I danced on this TV show called Soul Train, right? They had the show that had come out, and a few of us knew the casting director through our music program, and I got a chance to go on that show several times, dancing, what have you. And I would go along sharing. Well, alcohol made me. I was dancing before I started drinking. Except, it's funny, the disease that I suffer from that has this self-encompassing delusion. I always have to strip that away. I always got to be real honest, about this process. And it illuminates me and lets me know a lot of things about myself. See, because I'll lie. See, and I'll believe it. Because I believed that narrative for a long time. Anyway, I don't know why I took that. I had to take a trip down that side street, Charles. So I'll come back to where I am in my story. I'm in college and I'm drinking. And being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and coming to AA meetings, I know the traditions very well, and I respect the traditions. So I don't share in detail all the substances that I use, but I'm an alcoholic, y'all. And know this, alcohol opened the door to every other substance that I use. And it's the 70s, and I'm in college, and you need to know, man, I'm smoking herb, I'm doing mushroom, I'm doing all this stuff behind my alcoholism, right? And if there's anybody who is new in here who might be fooled or confused about whether or not you be alcoholic, just ask yourself about your relationship with alcohol. And you don't have to drink the quantities that some of us might have or gone the lengths that some of us had. However, know what it does to me because when I do it, I do everything. See, and I know the craving starts. We'll talk about that later. So anyway, I'm in college. I'm going through everything that's good. Alcohol's freed me. I'm partying. But I don't want to just feel good at the parties now. I want to feel good on Wednesday. And I want to feel good on Monday, right? And so now I'm drinking every day, daily drinking. Daily drinking takes a toll on your studies because now I can't study as much and my grades start to slip. And I need to keep up, so I start cheating. I start cheating on my exams. I start plagiarizing my term papers. Hell, I start buying term papers from these services that used to sell them because I got to keep up, right? And I present well. I don't need you to see how nervous I am and how frightened I am about what's happened to me now. And so I cover it up with bravado and with humor and with all of these other kinds of things. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure I still get by. So my character starts to change and I start becoming a liar and a cheat. And I don't connect this up with my drinking because after all, that's the thing that freed me. So that can't be the problem. The problem is school. It's those rules. And I used to say, well, nobody wants to be just a bookworm anyway. I want to be a student of life. Knowing all the things to tell myself to justify my behavior and my conduct. And what happens is I graduate from Loyola on time in 4 years in 1976. And I get accepted to go to law school, a law school called Hastings College of the Law. It's a law school that's located in the city of San Francisco, one of the most prestigious law schools in the nation. I did not know that at the time that I got accepted. The only reason I went there is I knew if I went to Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, where I got accepted, I knew that those long-throated brothers of mine would drag me down because we partied hard together all my way through college. And I know if I stay in LA, they're not going to let me make it through law school. All right. So I got to get away from them before they drag me down. So I do what I know now to be a geographic to San Francisco. Unfortunately, I did take one brother there with me. I shouldn't have. Me. because my disease flourished when I went to San Francisco. I started using a nice white powdery thing in addition to my drinking when I went there, and I speed my way through law school. I become a law clerk for a guy who's an alcoholic and a drug addict just like me. And he has a motto. He said, we play hard and we work hard. And he taught me that that's how, and he seemed to be successful to me. And I clerked for him and we worked hard, but we played hard. And I need to let you know, man, that I thought that's the way a successful person is supposed to do it. And I modeled myself after him. And I go through summer school after first and second year, and I graduate from law school early in 2.5 years. I'm 23 years old, and I'm graduating from law school. All my classmates were still finishing out their last semester, and they got a test you got to take to be a lawyer called the bar exam. And I'm taking it because nobody passed it the first time. And I figured, I'll have a leg up on my classmates when they finish school. And so I take the test, and the test results come out on the same day that I'm walking across the stage and graduating with my fellows. And before I even walk across the stage, I learned that they posted the bar results and I passed. And at age 24, I become one of the youngest Black attorneys licensed to practice law in the state of California. And I know I'm a genius. I'm a boy wonder. I know I'm a, it's funny. I'm looking at some of the squares and I see some clapping taking place. Believe me, there will be no more clapping taking place for a while because I'm an alcoholic. See, what I learned through that experience is the worst thing you can serve me as an active alcoholic is not adversity. The worst thing you can serve this drunk is success. Because the success fueled my ego so much to the point that I thought that I could do anything. And I built and tore down my life for the next 5 years. I would find jobs and I would lose jobs. No, I wouldn't lose them. I would leave them before they could find me out, before my alcoholism caught up to me. Because at every job that I went to, man, I need to let you know, man, I am a selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed, self-indulgent drunk who uses drugs in addition to his drinking, to the point that I am useless. I am not useful for anything. And I had great jobs. And I ran away from all of them. Just ahead of the posse, right? Until the point came to me that by the time I was 30, I thought I was going to be a millionaire. I didn't even have a bank account. By the time I was 30, I didn't have a nice house on the hill, a condominium, or a mansion. I was living back at home with my mother, sleeping on her floor. Those 5 brothers I referenced to you were also back at my mother's house because all of us had fallen prey to the disease that I suffered from. And we became these parasites, these leeches that preyed upon my poor mother. I was stealing the food out her refrigerator to cook plates for people around the neighborhood. I stole shoes out her closet because she wore the same size as the dope lady around the corner. I stole a gold watch. Even as I say it now, I feel so ashamed. I stole this gold watch my mother had been given by her company, Prudential Insurance. If we have any of our new friends on here who might wonder about the true nature of the disease that I suffer from, that is a fatal illness, if unarrested. I have a physical abnormality, an allergy to alcohol. That when I drink, it creates a craving in my body where I will do whatever it takes to get enough. My mother, who raised me and my 5 brothers by herself when she put that drug of a powder out, who went to night school to get a high school diploma while she cooked and cleaned for other people's families in order to keep food on our table, who was involved in my life to such an extent that she was the president of the PTA at our school, that she had us in church every Sunday morning. No family car, ever. And yet she got 6 boys dressed and cleaned up and got us in church by way of grandparents taking us, family friends taking us. Sometimes we were close enough to where we would walk. And I need to let you know, she made sure her sons were spiritually fed. My mother did not just stop at getting a high school diploma. She got 2 jobs and went to night school to get a college degree. She got that degree from Cal State Los Angeles. Got a job for Prudential Insurance Company, where they loved her so much, they didn't wait for her to retire to give her a gold watch. Luis, they just gave it to her, and I steal that watch. I love my mother more than life, but let me have a drink. The craving knows nothing of love, trust, honor, respect. Let me have a drink, and I become a beast. I become an animal. But that's not the worst part of my illness, because the solution is simple. Just don't take the first one. But there's something about my thinking that is different than non-alcoholics. It's described in our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in the chapter called There is a Solution and More About Alcoholism, where they talk about this obsession, this thought that resonates in my brain that always whispers to me, this time it'll be different. It don't always say it like that. So it comes at me in different ways. I need to let you know that a guy beat me so bad one time, And I come home and I'm bloodied and I'm beaten and I'm dirty and I'm filthy. And my mother comes to the front door and she sees her son and she almost faints. I look so bad. But she takes me and she brings me into the house and she bathes me, grown man. And my mother puts me in the tub and she bathes me and she cooks. She cooks for me and she feeds me. And then we sit at the table and we pray. My mother's holding my hand. She's praying. She's asking God that whatever it is that is happening to her son, please. And as she's praying, and my mom can pray, man, we start crying and we're rocking with each other. And she's praying and we're crying. And I cry out to her, Mama, I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. And I need to let you know that when I said that, Val, I meant it with everything in me, that when I said I'm never going to do it again, I meant it. And that was a Sunday, and I didn't drink on Monday. I went back to work, and I did not drink. And I didn't drink on Tuesday or Wednesday. And somewhere around Thursday, my head, unbidden, nothing in my system, my head just had a thought. That ass whooping wasn't that bad. Where did that come from? Right? But I don't drink, right? But on Friday, we get paid. And I'm loaded. And I'm unable to recall with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even days ago. And Jackie, I can't even remember praying with my mother. That when they gave me that money, I could not even remember. That's just one instance of hundreds of instances of me being unable to recall, with me going back to the thing that was killing me. I think it's my salvation. And if you have the kind of thinking that I have, you may be alcoholic. And until I could address the third part of my illness, that disease of my spirit, that sickness of my soul, the hole that I've always tried to fill with outside stuff, and it's never been enough. On July the 13th of 1986, a guy tried to beat me to death in front of my mother. He was a very dangerous guy. His name was Kenny. Kenny was selling bags of weed, and he gave me some of these bags to sell for him, and I had a bright idea, and I thought I needed to invest in other commodities, right? And divest our funds, and just kind of like, what happened. And at the end, I don't have his money. And I think Kenny's going to do something very bad to me, and I have a bright idea. I said, my mother had just got dropped off from church by these sisters that were taking care of her because her derelict sons could no longer take care of her. So these sisters dropped my mother off, and my mother was dressed beautifully in some beautiful church clothes. And I had a thought. I said, if I take Kenny in my mother's house, he knows her. He won't do anything to me. So Rick, I take this wolf into my mother's house, unmindful of her welfare. And I take Kenny in my mother's house and I start to explain to him, Kenny, I'm so sorry I don't have your money. And Kenny is very reasonable. Kenny says, Ronnie, it's cool. It's fine. We can make credit arrangements. Why don't we just step out on the porch? Your mother don't not hear about this, right? Because mama's in the kitchen cooking. She don't know what we're talking about. And so when Kenny suggested we step outside, I thought that's a pretty good idea. And I'm thinking to myself that once again, I gotten by. This ain't the first time that my life had been threatened. And I think that once again, the kid has made it, right? So I step outside. I don't catch the message, y'all. Kenny steps outside first. And I step out after Kenny. And Kenny must have leaned back and hit me as hard as he possibly could. And I found myself flying across my mother's yard like a superhero without a cape. And I fall on the grass and I roll over, and Kenny proceeds to run over and starts to kick me in the head and stomp me, trying to kill me. And as Kenny is kicking me and stomping me, I felt as if I were removed from my body watching this happen. And Kenny is kicking me and stomping me. And as I look over, I see my mother walk out of the house onto the porch. And I expect her to say, stop, that's my baby. But my mother says nothing. And I look back over at Kenny, and Kenny is still kicking me and stomping. And I look back at my mother, and my mother turns around and she walks back in the house and she closes the door. In Bill's story in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson has a line after his second relapse. He says that quicksand stretched all around, that no words can tell of the loneliness and despair that I felt in that bitter morass of self-pity, that I had been overwhelmed, that alcohol was my master. I only quote Bill Wilson's words because he just wrote it better than I could say it. That's the way that I felt. The next day is when I went to the Harbor Light Center, a men's recovery home run by the Salvation Army, located in the middle of Skid Row here in downtown Los Angeles. Because even though I had been a practicing attorney, I didn't have any insurance. I didn't have a job. I was broke. I just had to go to the first place that I could go, and they saved me. They gave me a bed, and they detoxed me where I did nothing but eat and sleep for the next 7 days, and then they started bringing me to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, where I started sitting in the front and listening like only a dying person could hear. There were men and women sharing with me as I'm sharing with you today, that I would come and then I would come to. And then I would come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. The spiritual solution to my spiritual problem. They told me that I needed to find a power greater than myself. I said, wait. Power greater than yourself. Higher power. You can't fool me. I know what you're talking about. You talking about God, right? You know. You don't, they said, well, okay. But many of us call the power God, but you don't have to. You can call it whatever you want. I said, well, I know about this God. I know about God. I was raised in church. I know all about God. I know there is a God, but that God don't want to have nothing to do with me. If you had done the things that I had done, hurt the people that I've hurt, done the unspeakable acts of betrayal, God don't want to have nothing to do with me. It says, Ronald, we have a chapter for a guy like you in our book. It's a chapter called We Agnostics, the Spiritual Kindergarten. And it's within the pages of that chapter that I learned how to put aside everything that I thought that I knew about this God, about this power, about spiritual terms. There's a line in that chapter that says, deep inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It says that he has sometimes been obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things. But it tells me that if I am willing to seek, to search fearlessly, where? Within myself, we believe that it is only there that he can be found. And I got hope, our theme for today. Because I've always looked for God in the sky or in a preacher or in my mother or in somebody else who has always seemed so much more godly, so much more spiritual than me. After all, I know me. I know the way that I think. I know the things that I've done. And I never thought that there could be a God residing within my bosom. He says, Ronald, you have just piled so much garbage on top of the power. But we have a prescription. We call them steps. And we promise you, Ronald White, if you are willing to take each one of these steps in their order and in their continuity, we promise you that when you get to the end, you will have an awakening. And again, I got hope. I was at the Harbor Light Center for 130 days while they start to clean me up, teach me discipline, See, I know the recovery home is not Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a completely separate thing. We cooperate with these kinds of institutions that help clean up our members, provide them a safe place to stay while they get in touch with the fellowship. And so that's what this place did for me. It gave me a safe haven by which I could make the connection. After those 130 days was over, I went to their sober living, a place called Harmony Hall, where they start to reconnect you with the community. I got my driver's license back. I get a clothing voucher. I forgot to share with you guys, when I got sober, I thought I could never be a lawyer again because I thought I had been disbarred for practicing without a license. I've never paid my bar dues. I know I'm a lawyer. Why do I need to pay dues? And so I thought that I had lost it. So I was just going to be satisfied with whatever work I could get. First job I got, sober. Part-time job as a bookkeeper for a little old lady that had a nursing home. That might sound fancy. Let me tell you what I did. I would catch the bus from the sober living to this lady's house. She sat me in her living room. She gave me a stack of bills, and she took her checkbook and she signed a bunch of blank checks. And she handed me the checkbook. And she said, "Mr. White, I want you to pay all my bills and balance my checkbook, and I'll be back in a couple of hours." And she left me alone in her house with a bunch of blank signed checks. And I'm scared. I'm 5 months sober. When she came home 2 hours later, she found me sitting in the same spot where she had left me, and I handed her checks. I handed her bills, and they were all sealed up with checks inside, and I gave her checkbook, and the checkbook didn't have no missing checks. And there was nothing missing in her house. And that lady paid me $40 a week to do that job. And when I caught the bus back to the sober living with that $40 in my pocket, I felt 10 feet tall. Because you see, it had been a long time since anyone had trusted me. And I knew there was something about that spirit that had gotten so sick when I had started to drink and use was changing, and I grew closer to the power. When I was 10 months sober, they told me I had to leave the sober living to make room for somebody else from the Harbor Light Center to come over. And I was scared. I was hiding out in the sober living because I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to go to my mother's house because that's where I drank and used. And I knew if I went back there that my sobriety could be threatened, and I wanted to be sober more than anything else. And I shared this at a panel that was coming into our sober living. And this lady from Alcoholics Anonymous who had brought in that panel told me, she came up to me at the end of the meeting, and she said, "Ron," she said, "you can move into my apartment with me and my roommate Jenny until you get a home group and until you feel comfortable enough to move back to your mother's house." You know, when she told me I could move into her apartment, you know what I heard? "I want you." You know how attractive we are at 10 months, right? Thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous that when I moved into Yvonne's apartment, I did not try to make any moves on her. She didn't try to make any moves on me. And I respected her house, and she gave me a key. And I did nothing but go to work and go to meetings for the next 2 months till I got a home group in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was able to move back to my mother's house. And that lady taught me the meaning of trust and unconditional love, and I grew closer to the power. When I was a year and a half sober, going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, sharing, the program works, keep coming back, right? And somebody walked up to me, one of my good friends at the end of the meeting, says, "Ronald, you talk all that shit about how you trust God and you trust the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Why don't you call a state bar and find out what's happening with your bar card?" Living in fear in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I fear rejection so much that if I think the answer is going to be bad, I won't even ask the question. And based off your faith, I contacted State Bar. They told me that I hadn't been disbarred, but my license had been suspended for non-payment of dues, 2.5 years worth of dues, $2,500. $2,500 sounded like $25,000. I had a minimum wage job. I thought I'll never get it back. But you know something? It's amazing how much money you can save when you're not drinking. For the next 6 months, I saved half of every paycheck, and I wrote a check 2 years. I wrote a check to the State Bar of California, and they gave me my bar card. 2 months later, somebody said, isn't it time for you to apply for a job as a lawyer? Still living in fear, afraid of sending out that resume that has that gap. You know that gap we have when we get sober. Well, I went to a job interview with the Los Angeles County Public Defender's Office. They saw the gap. They asked me about it. I told them, sir, I'm an alcoholic. I didn't intend on telling them that, but you guys have me trained. I said, I'm an alcoholic. I said, I've been sober for the last 2 years. They said, lawyers do a lot of drinking. Don't you think the stresses of this position might make you want to drink again? I said, sir, it was stressful when I was out there. I said, I think God has prepared me to do this job. They looked at me. I mean, I don't think they hear G-word job interviews very much, but I said, okay, well, we'll contact you in 10 days, let you know if you're on the waiting list. And I thought I was ass out because of that alcohol stuff. But you know something? They called me and said they wanted me in for another interview. And when I showed up to that next interview, they had me see the head public defender of all Los Angeles County. And that guy walked around in his office and talked about what public defenders do. And he asked me no questions about alcohol. And he just stopped talking and gave me a funny look. And he had walked over to the chair where I sat. He held out his hand to me and he said, Ron, said, we'd be proud to have you join our office. Didn't he know just 2 years before I was sleeping on my mother's floor, stealing the food out her refrigerator to cook plates for people? What is that but a miracle? See, Alcoholics Anonymous takes the broken up pieces of men and women working with the guidance of a loving God who works through the unselfish men and women who toil in this fellowship. We put the pieces back together again. I've had untold miracles take place for me since I've been sober. I married a secretary in the public defender's office, and we celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary this past May. My son just walked in front of me just now, Ronald Jr., the consummation of that marriage. My wife had a daughter who was 6 years old when we got together, Terrence. Some of you know the difficulties of coming into somebody's life early in those early stages, but I simply applied the principles you guys have taught me in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when Terrence graduated from high school, she introduced me to all of her classmates as her dad. She has given me 4 beautiful grandchildren. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. I couldn't even dream big enough. I hear people say things beyond your wildest drunken dreams. I could not even dream when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. All I had were nightmares. You guys have completely changed the way that I look at life. You have given me hope. With hope, you have it all. I was a public defender for 12 years. While I was a public defender, I was invited to go to the White House in Washington, D.C. by the President of the United States at the time, who heard about the work I was doing in my community. And he wanted my input on a federal crime bill they were putting together. I found myself standing on the lawn of the White House being interviewed. Hell, I was watering the lawn for the dope man when I was drinking. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. I got my own law office for 15 years after I left the public defender's office. I've represented members of Alcoholics Anonymous, their children, people in my community. I was afforded the opportunity to be more than I ever thought that I could be. I was in the middle of the herd in Alcoholics Anonymous, sponsoring and being sponsored. That I had commitments. I was on convention committees. I was secretary. I was coffee maker. I was ashtray washer. I was whatever it was that I could do in Alcoholics Anonymous. I sometimes would find myself at one phase in Alcoholics Anonymous. I found myself being dismissive of the sober dances and the picnics and all this other kind of. I was saying that's not the stuff to keep you sober. I said it's the book, and I found myself, are you crazy? I said, thank you. When I was new, those were the things that kept me coming back, because they kept let me know that you can have fun sober, that you can have sober friends. I think everything we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is just a little piece of the puzzle. There is no one thing. We're a 3 legacy group, right? Unity, service, and recovery. And all of it in equal parts will keep me whole. It ain't all pink clouds and puppy dogs in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not all the good times. We sometimes face very dark times. 7 years ago, I found myself sitting in the parking lot of my law office contemplating suicide. And I'm thinking of killing myself because I'm holding a letter from the State Bar of California telling me of their intent to disbar me because of my representation of a client who embezzled $1 million from some of his investors. And because the money had been given to him through my trust account, I had the responsibility of watching what he does with the money, making sure that he used it appropriately. And I did. I trusted him, and I didn't do my job. And as a consequence of that, I was losing my license. And I can't tell you the fear that gripped me, and the shame, and the guilt. And it felt so dark. And all I could think about is, who would ever want to be my friend? Who would ever? I have disgraced anybody that I've ever had a part of my life. And you know how we're very dramatic. I told you how, drama came here, right? And I'm thinking, no, they'll never want me in another meeting. They'll never, what will my mother say? What will my wife say? Well, my wife, I don't know. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and Bill's story, Bill is in the hospital having been acquainted with the Oxford group steps by his friend, Ebby Thatcher. And he talks about how his friend had said that it was imperative that he work one alcoholic with another. Bill said, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through strenuous work and self-sacrifice for others, then he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. And if he did not work, he would drink. And if he would drink, he would die. And then faith would be dead indeed. And I don't know which person it was I might have worked with over the 28 years I was sober at the time, and which thing that it was that I put in the spiritual bank in Alcoholics Anonymous that let me make it home through that darkness, through that fear. And my wife didn't reject me. She embraced me. And my mother, she wasn't embarrassed. She cried tears of support for me. And she told me, you'll be all right. And my brothers didn't reject me. And the men and women in Alcoholics Anonymous embraced me, and they carried me for the next 2 years till I could find work. They helped me move when I lost my house. My wife went back to work after having not worked for 25 years because I was able to support her, and she showed up. People have shown me, man, they are much more than I've ever given them credit for. It's amazing what our thinking, what these fears will do to me. I'm going to leave you with this. I had to speak at a conference 3 days after I was contemplating suicide. Me and my brother Ralph had to fly to Tennessee to speak at the Music City Roundup. We were doing a workshop, and I didn't want to go, but I honor my commitments, even in the darkest of times. And I went there, and I'm at breakfast with 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous, Kent Coleman and Steve Lee. And they're dear friends, and I'm crying, literally crying to them. I'm so sorry that I've let you guys down, that I've let the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous that's given me everything, and I've let you down, and I've lost my license, and I'm crying. And they try to console me and tell me about things they have been through. And our stuff always seems like it's worse than anybody else. And I'm crying, and I finally say, who would ever want me to speak again at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous after what I've done? And one of them looked at me like I was crazy, and he says, Ronnie, don't you know that in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more that you F up your life, the more we want to hear your story? And they said, not because you messed up, but what we want to know is, how did you not drink through that? How were you able to get through the darkest moment of your life and not pick up? And I told you that it is merely by the grace of a loving God and the fellowship of men and women that I'm looking at right now who have embraced me, who have loved me, who have let me know that even when it's all wrong, it's all right. I cannot thank you enough for my life. That is the hope I have for Alcoholics Anonymous and for a drunk like me. Thank you so very much for allowing me to time travel, and thank you for letting me share.